I'm Paul Sullivan, your host on the Company of Dads podcast, where we explore the sweet, sublime, strange, and silly aspects of being a lead dad in a world where men often feel they have to hide or at least not talk about their parenting role. I know this from firsthand experience as a lead dad to my 3 girls, 3 dogs, 3 cats, and somewhat remarkably, 3 fish who are still alive. I did this all while managing my career and striving to be an above average husband. One thing I know for sure about being a lead dad is it's not a normal role. You're not doing what dads have traditionally done, going to work and leaving the parenting to mom or someone else. Nor are you always welcome into the world where moms are the primary caregivers. But here at the Company of Dads, our goal is to shake all that off and to focus on what really matters: family, friendship, finance, and fun. Today, my guest is Dave Andrews. After studying finance at the University of Ottawa, Dave found that what he really wanted to do was be a pilot. So he joined the Royal Canadian Air Force, where his airtime ranged from transporting the Prime Minister to flying military operations and supporting humanitarian aid missions. He then went on to fly for Air Canada, where he flew Boeing's 737 MAX in America, Europe, and the Pacific. Today, Dave is a lead dad, a role he took on during COVID. He works for Transport Canada, the Canadian equivalent of the FAA in the US, and has taken on the primary parent role to his toddler, while his wife works as a physician. Welcome, Dave, to the Company of Dads podcast.
Hey, thanks, Paul. I appreciate you having me here. It's nice to connect with you, and everything you spoke about in your intro was true.
That's always a good start.
Appreciate it. Yeah, it's good. It's good.
So Dave, you and I met when the final story I wrote ran in the New York Times, and you emailed me, and over the past several months we've been going back and forth, and I'm really grateful that you've joined me today because I think you got a great story.
Thanks, man.
If it's okay with you, let's skip over the finance degree, okay, and get right to the exciting part.
I agree. This is 4 years of let's get after it. Yeah.
Let's get right to the Royal Canadian Air Force. I mean, that is amazing. Did you always want to fly as a kid growing up?
No, you know what? It was good. Growing up in the 80s, my parents let me watch Top Gun. So that
I love Top Gun. So my middle daughter loves it too.
It's good. It's good. So that was always in the back of my mind, but no, I didn't. My family education was always important. So I decided to go to school and do a finance degree. Didn't really love it. Wasn't a passion. Kind of remembered that I liked Top Gun. So I thought I'd give the Air Force a go. Made it through training, didn't go the fighter pilot route, ended up being a transport pilot, which was awesome. It let me see the world. So flew around the world for 7 years with the Air Force, literally flew around the world. It was great. Great friends, great mentors, great bosses, great experiences. And then I had to make a decision. Do I stay? Do I go? I left, went to work in industry.
Hang on, we got to go more. We got to go more into the Air Force.
All right.
There'll be plenty of time to talk about Boeing and the 737 MAX. But I mean, how many countries did you go to?
Yeah, I mean, all the continents except for Antarctica. So we went down to southern Argentina, Africa. So I know Argentina isn't a continent, but South America, the southern tip of South America, throughout Africa, Europe. Asia, throughout the Pacific, all throughout the States. Everybody when we were operating through the continental U.S. Was fantastic to us. So everywhere.
What were some of the most memorable missions? Like some of the most
the challenging ones. I guess the challenging ones when you're operating with a friend. And that was what was great about the Air Force for me is that it was small, our unit was small, and I got to go and work in stressful situations with some of my best friends. An experience you don't have in high school or you don't have in university or college. So operating in those challenging environments with passengers who have, or clients who have tight timetables and important meetings, or equipment and individuals who have to get to certain places for certain reasons. So the challenge of working that out and not coming home and sleeping in your own bed and having those creature comforts at home. So it was great. It was a lot of fun.
And
I know that's very vague.
I know. It's you know what I want. I want more.
What you want. I know what you want.
Quick runway, touch and go.
Yeah.
you're not allowed to say? Is that it?
It's not that. It's just sometimes those are stories for 20 or 30 years down the road, right? You know?
I have to ask, in the United States, when the president
Yeah.
is on that Boeing, becomes Air Force One. When you fly the prime minister, do you have a certain call signal?
Yeah, it's a great question. Yeah, it's the call signs CanForce One, so very similar. But
Okay.
the Canadian Air Force uses, and this is open source, it uses a CanForce call sign. So the orders drive the prime minister as CanForce One. So yeah, it's interesting. As a young guy in my 20s, being able to operate with that call sign was a lot of fun. And when you take a step back,
I'm
yeah,
getting chills. I'm getting
yeah,
chills
it's
just
fun.
listening to you
Yeah,
tell that. I mean, that is so cool. Like you're coming in for a landing and you're like, calling the tower and you're like, it's Can Force One.
yeah, yeah, it's
Tell me
fun.
about
And
it.
again, it's different. Yeah, it's good. I mean, even operating down into the DC area, so um, into Joint Base Andrews, operating in there with CanForce One call sign for leaders summits. Really interesting work. And when you take a step back and as you age, you become wiser, I think, and you don't realize, at the time when you're young, the pressure and the implications of the job you have, and you're just one cog in the wheel. I'm just a guy that goes to work and drives a bus with wings, right?
But
You're part of
but
the
you're
team.
flying the
No,
prime
really.
minister. You're not
No, but
just,
you're part of the team. No, but there's so many pieces here that it's not just me. But yeah, looking back, it was really interesting work. And yeah, it was a great chapter, right? And again, maybe I'll highlight the one point. And yeah, it was cool, the people in the back and the things and the places. But what was important to me was my friendship, which I still have. One of the guys um, I flew with on squadron stood up at my wedding, and those are friendships and that I'll take with me forever. And they're great, great bros. At the time it was all men at the squadron, but great people that you go in and out of each other's lives. It doesn't have to be every week, every month. It's yearly, but you reconnect because you have that common experience. And I'm sure that translates across any job, any experience. It's like you in your world with journalism. You can reconnect with someone from a decade ago and it's like it was yesterday. So it was good. It was just good times. But the people that I got to work with versus the people in the back was that what I really took away from those experiences.
I don't want to come across as too much of a fanboy here, but did you also get like a cool name yourself, like
No,
Maverick or
that's a no,
Goose?
that's a fighter pilot thing, and
Okay.
that's a I respect that world. I never went down that route. Um, but no, Dave was it. It's, I'm sure if there are guys or girls from the transport world listening to this, or from the non-fighter pilot world, they'll know what I'm talking about. But I think that's a tradition from a different world, which I'm not a part of. So,
When
yeah.
you think about, when I introduced you, really was a range of flights that you were on, from again transporting the prime minister to a humanitarian aid mission. Who would
Yeah.
choose that for you? How would you know, like,
Yeah.
okay, it's Monday, this is what I'm going to do today?
Well, you don't.
Okay.
We day to day, and that was what was hard about that world. And if people are listening who are living in that world, they'll understand that struggle. It's a bit exhausting. It's literally 24/7, and you don't know where you're going to be tomorrow. And I that sounds very romantic. And it is, but it's not after a couple of years. But yeah, it's you don't know, and it just comes down in terms of high level who has to go where and what are the priorities. So yeah, that was a bit tiring. I did that for 7 years, and not knowing where you're going to be tomorrow, or if you're going to be home, or if you're going to be home for a birthday, or can I go out for dinner on the weekend? I don't know. So that answer kind of was one of the reasons that drove me to sort of more stability in industry, and here we are.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Segue
yeah,
into that. Segue into the decision. After what, 7 years, I think you said. Segue
yeah,
into
seven
to
years
go to Air
operating.
Canada to
Yeah.
make the transition.
Yeah, it was great. I mean, again, my contract was coming due, and you have to make a decision. And I wanted, I was still in my early 30s. I didn't have a family yet. I wanted to still operate airplanes. That's what I love to do. I loved, you know, executing on a plan and coming home and feeling like you've accomplished something in that day, right? So transition to Air Canada, I went through the application process, which was nerve-wracking. You know, it's like any job interview process. Nothing's a guarantee. Um, so I got hired on and went through their indoctrination program and ended up on the 737 MAX, which was pretty neat. You know, new machine in general, new machine to the airline. Got to go through their training system, training programs. It was really great, and the network that it was flying was a lot of fun. You know, as a narrow body, sort of what is typically a transcontinental jet that stays in sort of North America, continental U.S., Caribbean. We were operating over to London Heathrow, over the North Atlantic. We were operating to Maui, to Oahu. So that was really fun. You know, my first Christmas at the airline, I did 3 Maui's and a London in a 20-day span. So,
Wow.
you know, 4-day pairing, home for a day, 4-day pairing, home for a day. But yeah, it was tiring, right?
Yeah, but I mean, come on. With all
Yeah,
due respect, to the prime minister, flying to Hawaii and getting a layover, that sounds pretty nice.
that's good. No complaints, right? And again, just to reiterate, you know, I was the first officer in that world, so it was, yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun, and another really interesting chapter. And I'm not sure if I've closed the book on that one yet, but life's good as it is right now in terms of having flexibility to be a dad.
For any sort of airplane enthusiasts listening to this, you know, the Boeing 737 MAX had such great promise when it came out, and it was a really bumpy rollout. They had all kinds of issues with the mechanics. A couple of them. What was when you read those news reports and hear the struggles that people were having with that particular aircraft? What was your own, you know, personal experience with the 737 MAX?
Yeah, I mean, I trusted in the regulator. I trusted in the company and the decisions they were making. So I don't think you're going to get a lot out of me. I tend to stay in lane and scope in terms of opinions. So yeah, you know, it was stressful times. No one knew what was happening at my level. You know, day to day, minute to minute. But I think as an employee, my company treated me well, kept me in the loop. Like management kept us in the loop. So I don't really have too much to say about
Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough.
the Boeing or the Max, other than, you know, I enjoyed my time on it, and I enjoyed flying it, and it's pretty cool to see, you know, 737 Max in the logbook, right? It's a good story,
Yeah, yeah, and
you
touching
know.
down in Hawaii or touching down in London,
Yeah,
that's pretty cool.
yeah, yeah. It's fun, right? It's fun. It's good
Uh,
times. Yeah.
I guess there's no hazing where you had to fly to some like regional airport in Canada or
Wow.
like go down
Yeah,
to
you
like
know,
Kansas City or something like that.
I'd say, yeah, you know, I'd say I was lucky in the path, you know, and luck and hard work, but, you know, lucky in the path that I chose and that I was able to go on in terms of going to the Air Force and then going to a major Canadian airline. Not everybody has that path. A lot of people have to go fly up north. You know, you work your way through the different carriers, but I'd say I was very lucky with the experience I had in aviation and continue to have in aviation.
Yeah. Now we're here to talk about you being a lead dad, but somewhere
Yeah.
between flying a plane and being a lead dad, you must have met your wife. So were you still a pilot when you met, or when
No,
did you
actually,
guys meet?
we met back in high school. So met back in
Oh
high
wow.
school.
So the
Yeah,
whole
we
time
were.
you're flying in the Royal Canadian
Yeah,
Air Force, you were
yeah,
together. Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
How
She
long
was
have you been
going
married?
through. Oh, that's a great question. Let me run the numbers. Just about 7 years, but we've been together, you know, close to 20. So
Yeah.
since our late teens. So yeah. So
Wow,
we
that's
we
great.
were together through university, through her med school, through my Air Force training. So lots of change, lots of struggle, but she's a pretty awesome woman. I know everybody says they're lucky, but you know, when you're having conversations with people you don't know, you know, who aren't your family or your close friends, you really think about how lucky you are to have a partner in this game, like I do. So
Yeah.
I'm just a shout out to my wife.
I love it. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah,
and so she was there with you as you're flying all over the world, but of course you're kind of you're young kids, and like you said, she's in medical school, you're flying around.
yeah.
But at what point does it seem like, okay, you know, maybe we need to make a shift here? Is it when your son is born, or to talk to me about the shift?
Yeah, the big, I left the Air Force going to the airlines thinking I wanted to fly forever. And then, I think my role in this partnership, my awareness of what my role had to be really stemmed from COVID and the birth of my son. So, up in Canada, a lot shut down. The hospitals were, the birth wasn't what we expected in terms of my role in it. So that, I don't want to say disappointing, because he's healthy, he's happy, that's all that matters, but not what you expected, right? And then the industry took a bit of a downturn, and I really had to try and figure out, how was I going to be a father, because I wanted to play a role and support my wife, my family, my child, but stay in aviation. So I actually took a leave from the company, from Air Canada, went back to the Air Force, worked some project work as a reservist in the Air Force, and then I found an opportunity with Transport Canada. A friend sent me a job posting, and I applied and interviewed, and I'm grateful to have had that opportunity, and to have the opportunity to work with the organization I'm working at now. So it's multifaceted. To come back to your question, it's COVID and my son actually being my son, and not just the bean, right? So yeah, a bit of a struggle to make that change. You have these romantic ideas of what you want to do for your career, your life, but then things change, and you have to roll with that change. And I think with the support of my wife, she helped me sort of change roles from being a person who was focused on that operational level of work to build out the skill set, and go back to my finance degree and build out those skill sets, and to be able to play a bigger role in a different organization. But again, what does the future hold? I don't know. We'll see.
Right.
We'll see how this folds out. We'll see. Does our family get bigger? It's multifaceted. But to be able to, again, I know I'm lucky, but to be able to build on skill sets that the Air Force gave me and my undergraduate degree gave me, I'm grateful for that, and opportunity.
Yeah, I mean,
So
you pivoted, but you pivoted within your field. You're still in aviation. You're just doing something slightly
yeah,
different.
aviation, and shout out to the Air Force, is they really build a well-rounded individual. You really have time to think about the skills, um, that and the awareness and the responsibility they gave you. So that, I think, has really helped as an individual who's tried to pivot away from ops into a bigger sort of broader job.
Yeah.
Not on the flight deck, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Let's get a little granular here, because this is,
Yeah.
I think, the pivot is something that a lot of listeners might really appreciate hearing about. So that your son is 20 months, right? Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah, that's
So
correct.
let me do some simple ninth grade arithmetic here. Your wife's pregnant for more or less 9 months. That's 29
Yeah.
months. At
Yeah.
what point in that, sort of 2.5 year period do the two of you start having the conversation about, what are we gonna do when our son is born? Who is going to be the lead dad? Whose career
Yeah. So
is less likely?
that's a great question, Paul. And all along the plan was for me to be gone 18 days a month. So from day one through pregnancy up until Will came into our lives, the plan was for me to be gone and be a pilot, and live that world. So we planned based on that in terms of parental leave, which is different up here, and childcare, et cetera, et cetera. So really the pivot came with COVID and me realizing my responsibilities, and realizing that it's not the same for everybody. I'm not here to preach, to tell people this is what I'm doing and this is the right way. I don't want it to be interpreted as that, but based on our circumstances and the profession that my wife has chosen, and the responsibilities and the time that takes, I really had to take a step back and realize, maybe that dream, and the romance of, to me, being an airline pilot, maybe that doesn't fit into what we need. So she never, and I'll loop it back to I'm a lucky man to have um, a partner in my life like Stephanie. She never pushed me down that road. She let me drive it to sort of bring it into the lead dad, or lead dad, or being a more present parent, and being home, right? So she never pushed that. It was driven by me but supported by her. So that's kind of how we came to that. I'm not sure if we got to the nitty gritty on that one.
That's all right. So
Yeah.
was your son born when you left Air Canada, or?
Yeah, he was. So he's an April baby, and then I took a leave from the company in the summertime. So,
Right.
it was the birth. It was that, you can plan, but whether or not you execute on that plan is different, right? So we planned, and then reality happened and we had to shift. So yeah, Will was around, and I realized I wanted to be home. I needed to be home. And I had the means to do that. So that's, it's not for everybody, but that's kind of the direction we took it.
Right. But also, is it fair to say that your wife, as a physician, maybe she had less control over her schedule, unless
Yeah,
you had a bit more control to sort of make this pivot? Is that fair?
exactly. No, for sure. And you know, um, you take a step back and you think about, especially during the pandemic, the role that she was playing was very important too. And again, I'm not here to say, I'm a saint, I'm a savior, but you really have to take a step back and think about the bigger picture, from our family unit perspective. And yeah, she did have a less flexible job and less flexible opportunity. And if you look back at, the partnerships of 40, 50, 60 years ago, it's kind of flipped in terms of the breadwinner too. So not to talk income, but that decided, 30, 40 years ago who stayed home. And that sort of pushed me to maybe revisit my career choices
Mm-hmm.
to enable me to be home, because it wasn't just me that was providing, right?
I get it, Dave. This is the same
Yeah,
situation
yeah.
I'm in, that I've been in for 13 years, that I wrote about in the New York Times. But I always figure, like, instead of like forcing it and saying, okay, well, I'm still the man, I need to go out, and just say, like, you know what, we're a partnership, and if we're going to be a partnership, one of us is going to be the lead parent. You could be a lead dad, you could be the lead mom, but
Hmm.
in the case of you and me, we're the lead dads. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, I find it, I can't think of anything more rewarding, and to balance everything. But I have to ask you, in terms of,
Yeah.
you must have been in some pretty hairy situations, which you're not going to tell me for 20 years, in the Air Force, but I can, romanticize it. I've seen
Sure.
enough I've seen enough Jerry Bruckheimer movies to understand how you're coming in and all that. But when you think of, like, the craziest, hairiest day you had in the Air Force, and then compare it to the day at home when you're trying to organize everything with a really serious day job. Let's be honest, if COVID allows a certain among us to work from home, but you are working for Transport Canada, that's a serious a day job. Yet your son is absolutely going bonkers, like losing his shit. What would you have taken from that time in the Air Force of managing a stressful situation, and relate it to being a lead dad and parenting? Because I think that's something that the listeners might benefit from.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure.
translate that?
And again, maybe I'll start this with, um, it's a partnership too. I don't want to say that I'm here and I take the brunt of the
don't don't
childcare work,
don't be
but
so self-effacing. I don't want to be. I want
no,
you to
no.
say, like, the prime minister had 17 cocktails in the back, and I'm trying to land in Kuala Lumpur in the dark, and
Yeah. Yeah, Kuala Lumpur, that was actually a great spot. But um, yeah, it's this is more stressful than any day I had. And being a parent, being frustrated at bedtime because you can't communicate effectively. There's no effective communication. There's no level of crew resource management or human performance in military aviation training that can help you really communicate with a 20-month-old. Um, so, taking time, taking a step back, and tagging out, I think, is what, really, from my Air Force time, when you're challenged with a problem, you pass off control to the other pilot if you're the skipper, and you take a second and really think about it. So I'll tag out if it's a stressful bedtime, because because they are, but being aware of that. And I think one thing that having Will and being a parent makes me more aware of is how I react in stressful situations. And, because you can hear him repeat the words that you might say, or the sounds that you might say. You read the literature and you know that he's mimicking you and how he reacts in stressful situations. So I think awareness and taking that step back is what helps. Again, I'm not always good at it. Most of the time I'm not. We're working 80-20, where 20% I'm okay at it and 80% I'm a complete failure. But that's a starting point, right?
Dave, thank you for being on the Company of Dads podcast. This is amazing. I want to give you the final word and tell me the best part for you about being a lead dad.
Just seeing the dude every night. Every day he comes home from daycare, cooking dinner, and garage door opens up and I see that little face in the car as it's backing in the garage. So again, a bit romantic, because then you have to deal with it. But it's being present, it's being aware, it's being a role model, it's being there. It's knowing that my son, when he's 25 or 30 or 40, will look back and sort of know that I hopefully made a positive change in his life, right?
That's fantastic. Thank you again, Dave. I really appreciate your time.
Thanks,
today.
Paul. I appreciate it too.